Oh, just get it set up. Hi there, guys, and welcome. My name's Ken. This is Kale, and today we're going to be talking about dog sports injury prevention. You know, injury prevention is always top of mind for anybody who is, even if you're not competing with your dog, if you're in the training stages, or simply, you have an active dog and you love to go out and do sporting activities with them. So today we're going to show you some tips and tricks of ways that you can keep your dog injury free, or at least minimize that risk of injury. I'm Ken Steep.
I'm Kale McCann.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. So I'm really excited. Now, as I said, I've added a few things to the stream this week, and you'll see I've got this cool little news ticker thing. Now, this is really cool for me because it took me a long time to get it set up, and when I had that aha moment, I was super pumped. So if you get tired of looking at this, which I don't know how anyone could, right, Kale? Then you can read the ticker. So
I have to look at it all the time.
I hope you guys enjoy that. Oh, I see Becky Parker says Facebook is working. Thanks,
good.
Becky.
Cool,
I appreciate that. Now, I don't know whether I can gather comments from Facebook, but we can certainly follow your comments on YouTube. So thank you guys for commenting on that. Now, the big question for today is, do you do dog sports with your dog? We'd love to know, because we're going to show you some tips and tricks. Kale is 21-time world champion of dog agility. She knows a thing or two about training agility, but also keeping her dog sound. She's, that's something, regardless of the sport you're competing in.
It's like one of the biggest stresses of my week.
Absolutely. It really is. And I mentioned in my post on Facebook, I think, injury prevention is top of mind. It's something that we're all worried about, keeping our dogs sound and safe, not only so that they can, be well and healthy, but for longevity. You know what I mean? Like if some dogs get these funny little injuries that plague them and it becomes a chronic injury. And that's the kind of thing we certainly want to avoid. And we've got a few tips. Kale's got some great tips for you guys to prevent those injuries.
Yeah, I think the question I get asked a lot due to the level of agility that I train at is, how many times a week do you train your dogs? Like practice agility. And I think people are often surprised to know that I actually don't practice agility that often. Yeah. I do a lot of agility with my dogs when they're young, when I'm teaching and developing skills and, practicing for upcoming competitions. But a huge chunk of my week preparation or my training interaction with the dog is all about basically exercise and management and injury prevention. And the more fit dog you have, the less opportunity they are to be injured. Unfortunately, the sport that I play in agility, although it's, I love it. It's so much fun. It's super challenging. There's so many cool aspects of the sport. It's also, there's a lot of opportunity for dogs to be injured in it, unfortunately. So, we do what we can to make sure that doesn't happen. And our weekly ritual or
our habits
that we have with our dogs are something that I focus a lot on in my week with all of the dogs, whether they're, we have young dogs. And then I have a 10-year-old dog right now that I'm preparing for World Championships. I leave in 3 weeks for the Netherlands. She's 10 and she knows lots about agility. And right now my only goal is to keep her bundled up in bubble wrap so that she is totally, injury free by the time I go over there. But it's also about keeping her in shape and keeping her limber. And I'm doing a lot right now to help her with that. So
yeah, for sure. Now I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview. I'm excited to show you the what we've got here. We've got actually our stretch cam. That's what I've titled it, at least. And in a couple of moments, we're going to show you, Kale's going to show you some exercises and things that you can do with your dog. Now, we're going to do things a little bit, let's try to stay in order. Now, Kale and I often set up like an agenda for these things. And we try
because once we start talking about something that we're excited about, we often go off on a tangent.
Yeah, I also talk a mile a minute. So if I get confused and completely off track, I can see how that would happen to me. And sometimes I watch our live streams after the fact and I'm like, where am I even going with this? Or I'm responding to a great comment in the chat or something like that, and then we go off in a different direction. So let's start at the beginning. Now, Kale has been called a lot of things over the years.
Where are you going with this?
See, this is the anticipation. Can you guys, I bet they're excited to hear what I'm about to say. But one thing that I know she is a kibble counter. She's a kibble counter.
I'm a kibble counter.
Even for the dogs that we don't feed kibble, I would refer to her as a kibble counter. Now, let's talk, if somebody might not really be sure of what I am talking about, what would you consider, what do you think when someone calls you a kibble counter?
I am very, very particular about how much food my dogs get and when they get it. Poor Ken, I often, if I have to go away for a long time, I actually supervise him feeding our dogs so that I can like make sure that everything's going well. So my dog's weight is something that I'm really, really particular about, and specifically how much food they get. That is something that actually I adjust all of the time. Sometimes on a weekly basis, depending on how much activity my dog's getting. Maybe if it's sort of an off week and I'm letting them sort of have a little bit more of a relaxed week, then I'll adjust their food. I change the amount of food that I give them in the wintertime versus how much I give them in the springtime, summertime. I'm, maybe I sound a little bit like a crazy person, but I really do find that if I'm aware of that, then I can really make sure that they maintain a healthy weight. We have a lot of dogs, and I have like a routine down pat now with what I do with the feeding.
But it's really important to be fluid with that to maintain a dog's healthy body weight. We know that over the weeks, for a couple of weeks, maybe a dog gets less exercise, or maybe a dog has been like reaching the end of that puppy stage, and they had a super high metabolism, and then it starts to slow down. Well, it wouldn't be appropriate to feed that dog the same amount of food over that time. So Kale really keeps a close eye on each of our dogs and make sure that they're getting the appropriate amount of food, relative to their body weight as well as their activity level.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a good idea of how much food you should be giving your dog. One thing that I actually sort of recommend to people is to not look at the back of the dog food bag. That sometimes can be a bit dangerous, because if you're already starting with a dog that's overweight and you say, if you're supposed to have a 30-pound dog, but your dog is 40 pounds, and you're looking at the bag and say, okay, well, my dog's 40 pounds, and then you feed them for a 40-pound dog, you can see how dogs easily can get overweight. So you should really know what a healthy weight for your dog is so that you can strive to achieve that. I also think it's really important to actually measure your dog's food. I know a lot of people that just eyeball it, or, just, throw a whatever into the bowl. And, we use measuring cups when we give our dogs kibble. So it's like a deliberate 1 cup. I am so particular that if I have dogs that eat 1 cup and I have dogs that eat 3/4 of a cup. I actually don't use the same cup for both. I have a 3/4 cup and I have a 1 cup, because it's like impossible to get a perfect 3/4 cup if you're using a 1 cup.
Yeah. And not just
Hearing
that.
my self-talk, I sound nuts. But
no,
this is, it is something really important, especially, if you are,
it also makes it easier.
If you're into dog sports, though, like I think that even if you just have a family pet and you're not doing any, crazy physical exercise, you absolutely should be paying really good attention to their weight, because it affects their health and how long they live, and we want them to live forever. But if you are doing dog sports, fly ball, agility, herding, disc dog diving, whatever it might be, you really should be paying very close attention to how much you're feeding your dog, because it their weight can determine their level of performance. My dogs are faster in agility when they're lighter, and it prevents them from being injured, as we've said before.
For sure. Now let's go to the chat for just a second and see what people are saying in there. Let's see. I see something here. I'll send that over.
I wouldn't have, but okay.
So we see Sydney Gal 17 competes in agility with a 13-year-old and a 3-year-old with a second 3-year-old just beginning. So it's a broad range of managing physical well-being. And that is certainly, you wouldn't be feeding all of those dogs the same amount unless you found that the 13-year-olds were super high, super active, and it was easy to manage that way. Now I wanted to talk for a second. We don't just feed kibble. We feed raw as well. And Kale goes down to the gram on that stuff. Like, it is so precise. It's amazing. So talk about that for a second.
Yeah, well, I do that because I notice if I'm not specific, then, I'll not pay attention to their weight. Before you know it, they feel chubby again. And my dogs are never really chubby. That's probably not a good example, but they feel a little bit bigger than they were before. So I am very particular about that, and I'm changing it all of the time.
Right.
I actually have a little whiteboard above where our little feed station is with all the dogs' names and how much they're getting all the time, because sometimes I mainly feed the dogs, but Ken feeds the dogs a lot, and I change things all the time. And then if I forget to tell him, then it's like a whole thing. So I write it down.
Here's how it works, though. We have a whiteboard by the dog's feeding station, and it can be changed. You know, if we take Beeline down 10 grams, then regardless of who's there, and even to remember sometimes, if you think like it's changed, geez, what did I feed yesterday?
And then all the supplements they get on top of that.
Right,
It's a bit of a thing.
It's pretty elaborate. So moving beyond food, if someone were, a while ago, when did you teach the Healthy Hug?
I actually learned that from Purina. Purina came out with a Healthy Hug. They have this great chart that they put out.
Yeah. So Kale years ago did some stuff for Purina called My Puppy School, and in that she was teaching new dog owners some obedience skills and tricks and all sorts of things. And one of the things was the Healthy Hug. And do you think we should grab a dog and just show the Healthy Hug? But one of the examples that Kale showed was how to show people how to quickly and visually assess their dogs so that they know whether the dog was a little bit overweight or a little bit underweight. It sort of gives you a really quick idea. And I can switch to our stretch cam. I'm super pumped to show this to you guys.
I don't know where to put her so that they can see.
Yeah, you'll have to back up quite a ways.
So I have this coat on her right now because she's had a ton of exercise today. So my dogs wear these quiet. These background track coats.
Hey, fun.
For like circulation and all kinds of fun stuff. So here, come up here for a second, then they can see you.
Oh, that was pretty dramatic.
Okay, so I don't know how well you can sort of see this, but
here, I've got another light.
I will do my best. That's way better. So when I'm trying to figure out about weight, I have the dog stand and I'll run my hands down either side of her body. And when I'm running my hands down the side of her body, I want to easily be able to feel ribs. So, and if you're talking sport dogs right now, my dogs are usually pretty ribby. So I don't know, you probably can almost see her ribs as well. So she's quite thin. And then I want to be able to have a waist as well. So when you run your hand down the dog's waist, there should be an actual indent, behind their rib cage so that they have a bit of a waist. And then also when you feel them, they should feel tight. So there's lots of times where I'll put my hands on people's dogs and I do feel ribs a little bit. But I also, when I feel around, they just feel like loose or like squishy. That's what the term we use is, squishy. And
That's the medical term.
It's a medical term. Mm-hmm. And that tells me that they're not toned and they're not muscled. So Funky had an injury a little while ago, and I was feeding her less because I was resting her. And she wasn't overweight, but she was squishy. She went through a period where she was squishy because she wasn't getting any exercise. Now she's better now, and I've upped her exercise quite a bit, which I'll show you a bunch of exercises that I do with her shortly. But she's back now. When I put my hands on her, her muscles now feel very tight. Her waist, her abs feel very tight. Everything feels really good. So I know she's definitely getting a lot better shape. But definitely running your hands down. If you're having to squish your fingers in to feel their ribs, and some people say, oh, it's just muscle. You're kidding yourself. So you have to be able to feel ribs. All dogs' statures are a little bit different. She's obviously a fine bone dog, so it's easy to see. But that's sort of the basis of the Healthy Hug.
Yeah, and it's a really nice way to keep tabs on the physical condition of your dog, which is really, really important. Now, before
you should have your hands on your dogs all the time. Like I probably put my hands on their sides like every other day. Here, Fun, come here.
Yeah.
So I'm always aware, and that's so if I feel like they're like packing in a little bit more, then I'll put down my dog's food a little bit, or I'll consider, okay, am I really exercising my dog as much? And then if I'm not, or if it's a lower, week for me, then I will put their food down a little bit. Or, if I'm doing a ton of training, I watch either how much food they're getting. I don't use a ton of food with my dogs. My dogs really like toys. But if I'm doing like a ton of stuff, like I'm teaching Beeline a running dog walk right now, which means she's running a ton.
Yeah.
So I've upped her food, because if I don't, and she's like really thin, so you just have to be aware of it.
Yeah, and I think this Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. So Melanie Caldwell said, "Kale, do you have any?" Oh, I'll let you send that. Do you have any tips about noticing changes in your dog's weight before you see a noticeable difference, like too thin or too fat? Well-timed question, Melanie, and she probably asked that just as you headed back,
Yeah.
Kale. So, and that's a great way. Like Kale mentioned, I mean, we do have our hands on our dogs a lot, you know, for all sorts of reasons. But and it also sort of lends itself well to that handling exercise. Like
Yeah.
it's so important to have your dog comfortable with handling, to have your dog, you know, accept that you can touch them and you know, handle them, lift them, assess them, especially if you are into dog sports, because you might need to check on that dew claw that's torn out, or you might need to check on
She's ripped her dew claw many times.
right. You might need to check on the stability of that joint or something. So really take the time to handle your dog and get them really, really comfortable with it. So moving along, so we've addressed weight management for dog sports and for the family pet. What?
Can I just say one more thing about weight?
Yes, of course.
I'm not sure what you were going to get at there, but if you do have a dog that's overweight, don't stress about it. You can thin dogs out pretty quickly. I didn't mean to say quickly there. I meant to say easily, but it should not be done quickly. I should make sure
Right. No,
I
that's
correct
important.
myself there. You know, with my dogs, they never get so overweight that it's usually a big deal. But I have lots of people that come to take classes that, you know, they're just normal pet people, and all of a sudden they catch the agility bug, and
Yep.
you know, they're like, "Hey, I want to do this," and we have to have that awkward conversation about, you know, we need to get the dog thinner before you really do this, because it's just not fair. So, you
And
know,
just and explain that for a second. Like, what do you mean it's not fair?
it's not fair to ask a dog to jump, you know, high jumps and go through B's and go over A-frame for an hour when they're overweight. Like, imagine, you know, for me, I couldn't do that for an hour. I would die. But, you know,
It's a
the
lot.
dogs do whatever we ask them to. So we have to be really aware. Sometimes people are having motivation issues, and sometimes it's as simple as the fact that the dog's not fit.
Yeah, for
so they tire quickly. So there's lots of things to consider. But if you are looking to lower your dog's weight, then you should drop their food gradually, increase their exercise gradually. Be aware of what type of exercise that you're giving your dog so you're not overdoing it.
Yeah.
You know, I was just at, I go to a doggy rehab place every single week to take one of my dogs to do an underwater treadmill, and then I've also been taking Funky to get laser and ultrasound work on some of her muscles that have been sore in the past, just maintenance stuff to make sure that like we're good to go for Worlds in a few weeks. But we had a great conversation today. Actually, I told her we were doing this live tonight about, you know, they've had to tell people about weight management, and then that person's gone out, hiked their dog in the forest for 7 miles, and then they come back and the dogs are like a mess.
Right.
Because, or they, like she told me this week, somebody did that and the dog had a stroke.
Oh man, how
So
awful.
sad.
Yeah, I know.
But the person was just trying to do what they thought was right for the dog.
Sure.
They thought, okay, I'll go and exercise, and they took him on a hike that was just way too strenuous. So can you imagine if you like were sitting around for a long time, and all of a sudden, like the next day, you decide to do this like crazy hike or this crazy amount of exercise? Imagine how sore and how uncomfortable you would be.
For sure.
So you do have to do things very gradually, just like we would with ourselves.
Well, and I think about times when, you know, I used to race bicycles and motorcycles and things like that. When you get tired, you're much more likely to make a mistake.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you're not stabilizing those body parts the same way, and you're much more likely to get hurt. So the same thing applies to your dog. So just be aware of it. You know, it's not something you need to be hyper concerned about if you have a dog that's already pretty active. But if you're having a dog who you're just starting to introduce more elaborate or more difficult, whatever activity to, then be aware of that. Be aware of the fact to introduce it slowly. So this maybe brings us to the next point that we wanted to talk about. Now, we do a lot of different things with our dogs, and Funky, sometimes she'll stare at me and it's completely adorable, and I don't know whether she's going to lick my face if I get closer to this microphone, so I'm
You
going to
should
try to
try.
avoid. No way, Jose.
Put your face near her
No
face.
way. But we do a lot of different things with our dogs, and cross training, and it, you know, is simple, or is whatever you might think that means, it can be really simple for you and your dog. And we do all kinds of stuff with our dogs. So, like, what are some of the things that you would do with our agility dogs? You know, they're mainly, you know, competitive agility dogs, but we do things like running with them. You know, we take them for long runs, long hikes.
Yeah, we are very lucky. My parent, watch the microphone fun. My parents, where our business is located, we are located on 22 acres of open, beautiful, flat grass, which is great. So I work there many days a week, so I will take all the dogs, and we call them prop walks. So we walk the property. It takes about 25 minutes to a half an hour, and we let the dogs just free run in the fields. Now it's great because there's no trees or anything around, so they can really run. But it's great. They get so fit. So, they walk and then they run and they sort of, all chase each other, and they get great exercise. And knock on wood, I'm lucky because my dogs do it very safely. They're very used to running with one another. So that's a type of exercise they get a lot. I also will leash walk my dogs a little bit as well, which is something that I've incorporated more in the last little bit. It's not something I did a lot before. I don't really live in an area where leash walk, like we don't have sidewalks. You can take your dog for a leash walk around our neighborhood, kind of. But the reason why I was doing it is my dogs didn't have great quad muscles because they weren't walking very much.
Yeah.
They were just sprinting everywhere. So I like to walk my dogs as well, or I'll walk them and then I'll run them and then I'll walk them again.
But you can do two things there. You can control the pace, number one, but you can control the duration as well. Like
Yeah.
so many dogs run and then they sniff something for a little bit, and then they'll run like mad, and then they'll find something else to sniff.
Yeah.
So this way, by leash walking them, it's like a steady state cardio for fitness people. You do that persistent thing for a long period of time, and it just works different muscles.
Yeah. And then with our dogs, with our pack of dogs, our border collies, they just run all on their own.
Right.
Funky's totally different. She doesn't really care about running with the other dogs. She likes to kind of hunt and sniff. So when I go for a prop walk, I actually choose to walk her on leash the whole time instead of just let her roam, because otherwise she doesn't get any exercise. She stands still for 5 minutes and then she'll boot to catch up with us and then stand still for 5 minutes. So I always put her on a leash so that we're walking pretty, at a pretty vigorous pace. So in addition to doing that, because I know she doesn't get quite the same cardio as my other dogs, is I bike her, or we also have a treadmill in our dog lair down here. So she'll go on the treadmill if the weather's not great. Like today, the weather is beautiful, so we went on like a 20-minute bike ride. We go up, some hills and stuff. Of course, I warm her up and cool her down before all of those things. But I do that special for her because she doesn't get the same intensity of exercise as the other dogs do. Or we'll go for hikes in the forest.
Yes. And we'll make our dogs
hills.
swim. We have beautiful running rivers and things around us. We'll let our dogs go in some of the deeper water to have a swim. I just wanted to point out that Kale referred to this as our dog lair, and you've probably heard me refer to it as our studio. So, it's the same place, but just a different perspective for
all
sure.
the dog lair stuff is hidden from your eyes.
Yeah.
Now.
You just can't see it, but it's surrounding us. I think I saw, before we leave the food and feeding stuff, I think Becky Parker's got a good question here.
How early would you start a dog puppy on joint supplements? I use Sasha's Blend supplement. It's great because it has a greenlet mussel in it. And our youngest right now is 1.5 years, and I bet her name's Beeline. I bet she's been on it for a year. I think I put it on at about 6 months or so. It's not going to hurt them. So I started pretty early.
Yeah, and this isn't a sponsored video for sure, but we need to thank Siva because they give Kel all kinds of really
amazing
great supplement stuff.
Yeah, I love Sasha's Blend, and I also love another product called ProGut.
Yeah, it's really great. If our dogs have GI issues at all, it takes care of all that. So thank you guys at Siva for all of that. So let's leave food and feeding. Let's get on to some of the activities. Let's talk about some of the stuff that you're doing. Warming up for our dogs. So every week we have agility classes. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we're doing. Maybe we can show some of the things that we're doing for those agility dogs in our agility classes at McCann Dogs.
Yeah. So when we're training our own dogs, or if we have classes, we encourage our students to walk their dogs before class. For 5 or 10 minutes, like a pretty good paced walk, whether it's around the arena a couple times or around the agility field, whatever it might be. And then we'll also do some short retrieves or some backing up exercises, some tugging. Tugging is a great warm up, especially if they like to lean back into the tug and have fun. Just sort of get them moving that way, opposed to just like ripping them out of the car or the crate and then doing a sequence or a course. That's a sure way to cause injury. So taking an opportunity to warm your dog up is really important, especially as they get older. It's even more important. Like I have to warm Funky up a lot before I run her now because she's 10. She's like totally loving you right now.
You're just staring at me.
She's 10 years old and her old bod just ain't what she used to be. You know, I've been lucky. She's had very little injury in her 10 years of being on this earth. But I'm also very, very aware of her body and I'm trying not to overtrain her. I warm her up and cool her down really well.
And these, Kale's about to show us some of these exercises and things. And when Kale mentions that she takes the dog out of before our classes, these are exactly the same exercises you can do before a trial. You know, you get to the trial, you get your dog out a little bit early, you really figure out your day, see where you are on the list, and then get your dog out early and do some of these warm-up exercises. Because, I mean, we know that in agility training, you know, you're working with your dog for half an hour or 40 minutes or an hour or whatever. And at a trial, you're out there for 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds are the same intensity or maybe more in some cases as, you know, you're working hard in those agility while you're agility training. So really keep that in mind. Although the amount of time is a lot less, that preparation needs to be the same.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So for me, like I will get my dog out like almost 20 dogs ahead if this is for agility, so that I have time to walk. I jog my dogs a little bit before they go in the ring. I do a bunch of exercises and stretches with them. And I do all of that before I even go to the warm-up jump. My dog's already warm by the time they get to the warm-up jump. I always think it's funny that they call it a warm-up jump.
Right.
I think it should be more of like a practice jump.
Yeah.
Because they should be warm before they get there. And then also a little sort of hint that I do. So with Funky, if she's too tired when I take her in the ring, she's not as fast. So if you warm a dog up, excuse me, they actually stay warm for a half hour. So you can warm your dog up. So for her, I warm her up, I get her all ready, and then I will put her away when there's just a couple dogs, and then I'll bring her back out so that she's not like exhausted by the time we go to the ring. And then we'll do like our pre-ring connection routine that we have together, and then we go in from there. But I learned a lot about warm up and cool down from my good friend Diamond Ruman. She's from Edmonton. She was able to pass on a lot of fabulous information to me. She's a body worker that I always use when I go to Worlds, and she's the one who told me that they're warm for a half hour, which I didn't know before. I thought you had to like warm them up and then do something right away, but you have 30 minutes before they're before you have to warm them up again.
Yeah, and she's really amazing with the dogs.
Unbelievable.
She's really connects with the dogs, and she can give you a lot
Funky
of insight.
and I are really excited to see her in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess you can mention where you're going.
Yeah, we're going to the WAO, the World Agility Open World Championships, and it's in Netherlands. And this girl Diamond is the team's body worker.
Yeah, it'll be pretty exciting. And hopefully, Kale, maybe she can send us back some video. I'm not going on this trip. If you haven't seen on the channel, we actually documented the last time Kale and I went to the Netherlands together. There's a 3-video series that we posted from the World Championships of Dog Agility. We're super fun. But let's move on to some of these exercises. Let's talk about some of the things that you might be doing with the dogs.
So along with some of the running and stuff that I mentioned before, we also have lots of little exercises that we'll do to build muscle and strength. And you can see, is the stretch cam up right now?
It is up now.
So the stretch cam, you can see, those are 2 items that I use on a regular basis. One is called the egg, and the other one is just a little like
it's like a Bosu ball.
Disc. Yeah, it's kind of like a Bosu ball. But you don't even need equipment like this to do it. You certainly can do, the egg is like Funky's favorite, but you also can do lots of things that don't require any equipment.
Can we I wonder if we move that back a little bit so we can just see you a little bit better.
Oh my God.
This is
Did you see that?
I missed it.
On the egg and then I moved the egg.
Oh no. This is challenging for us. We normally are able to sort of sit here and prepare, but this our stretch cam is brand new, so setting up for you guys took a little bit of planning, and maybe you might have to change up a couple things.
Can
but
you see her?
yes, I can see her.
So a really easy one to do is just sits to stand. So when she's sitting, you can have them stand and then sit and then stand and then sit. And I've been teaching Funky a command called kick back. So when I say that, she's got to keep her front feet still and just push off her back end. Sit. Good girl. Ready? Kick back. Yes. So see how she just pushes her back feet? Sit. Good girl. Yes. Ready? Kick back. Yes. Good. Here. Sit. kick back. Yes, good girl. So it really allows her to get a good workout in the back end. Sit. Here, sit. Good. Kick back. Yes, good girl. And to teach her this, all I did, sit, was initially I take my opposite hand and I just tickle underneath her belly. She stands up and I reward, and then I just put it to a command. So that was really easy. So that's an easy one to do. You can add downs into it as well. If you have equipment. Oh, the other thing that I like to do is 3-legged stands. So
just move to your left just a little
this
bit.
way?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Here we go. I usually hold the leg that's closest to me, so I'm just going to hold the opposite leg so you guys can see. So with her standing, I'll pick up one of her legs and I'll hold it in the air. Good girl. And I just make her balance there. Good girl. And I'll just reward her for holding still. Good girl. Yes. Excellent. And I'll work all 4 paws, and it just sort of works a little bit of balance, a little bit of strength on each of the paws. Good girl. Okay, get it. So there's lots of different things you can do that way. Now, there's really advanced things as well, but I'm a little bit apprehensive to show you some of those things because I don't want you doing them without getting some advice from,
professionals.
Yeah. So, I do some advanced things because these are things that I do with her, all of the time, and I've had a lot of guidance. So you can do sit to stands on the Bosu ball there. With the egg, really easy one you can do on the egg. Can you see her where she is?
Yep.
Is just have the dog stand, and while they're standing, you just place your hand on their back and just simply bounce them up and down. This is a really easy one to do.
Funky looks like she's having fun too.
Bounce them, bounce them, bounce them. It works their abs, it works their core. Good girl, yes. Even just standing and bouncing on it is good as well, or you can do different positions. So I can do sit. Good girl. Kick back. Yes, good. Sit. Good. Kick back. Good. So she can do the same types of things on top of the egg. So those are just some basic things that you can do. Okay, babe. With your dog, just to sort of work some strength stuff. There's literally hundreds more, but I feel like we could be here all day.
Yeah. No, I think that was really good. And as Kale mentioned, if you are looking for more advanced training, find a local, dog. How would you even refer to someone who does like physical fitness for dogs?
If you go to like any type of physio place, canine rehab, you'll be able to find people who know how to do this. Or there is a program called FitPaws, or FitPaws. These are FitPaws equipment, but they're certified FitPaws trainers where people will go through some training to become certified, where they can recommend exercises for your dog. And there's lots of those people around, especially in the dog world.
Yeah. I want to mention really quickly, if you're just jumping on the stream, Kale McCann, 21-time world champion of dog agility, is giving us some tips on how to prevent injury or lessen the likelihood of your dog getting injured. And we've talked a little bit about weight management. We've talked a little bit about warm-up. We've talked quite a lot about warm-up and how important that is, whether you are practicing or you're competing with your dog. It's really, really important to make sure they're warm.
Actually, just with the warm-up again, last year, I started bringing my bike to competitions.
Yep.
And I would, Funky loves to run beside the bike when I bike. So I started bringing the bike to competitions, and I would bike her around before I would go in the ring. Again, enough that she wouldn't be so tired, but just so she was really warm by the time we were running. She's more limber, she's more loose, she can run faster, all those things.
And watching how much fun that you guys have, I'm just going to turn this light off. Watching how much fun you guys have, as Funky runs beside you. Yeah, I think I'll make a video this weekend of how to teach your dog to run beside you while you bike.
We have a few dogs that don't know how yet.
Yeah, so this will be perfect, and then we can share it with our YouTube audience. So look forward to that maybe sometime this week. If you're not subscribed this first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell notification icon. We publish videos every single week to help you spend some quality time with your four-legged family member. In the past, we've been publishing on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Our live streams are Fridays. But I think in the very near future, we're going to be changing up that upload schedule a little bit. So if you haven't hit that little notification bell, make sure you do that today. So we have talked about some of the stuff with the Bosu ball and the egg, but there's also a pretty interesting or important thing that we do with the dogs to adjust their striding or to teach them good striding. Not necessarily to teach them good striding, but to work them through the cavalettis is what I'm getting to. So let's talk about how we use the cavalettis and why we use the cavalettis.
Yeah, cavalettis are a great way to work on your dog's balance. It is kind of for striding, but so it's for building. More so for building muscle in a low impact way. You can play around with the height of the cavalettis, the width of the cavalettis. So whether you want them to have an extended stride when they're going through, or they want to have them to do a compressed stride. Ken made me some cavalettis that are awesome.
And I'm going to go to Stretch Cam. I knew this would be the perfect opportunity for me.
So you can buy actual cavalettis for sure. These are what we've made. So there's a couple different holes, height holes here. So we've measured this up. So this hole here, can you see that?
Yeah, I think so. I'll turn the light down a little bit. Maybe that. There you go. That's better.
This hole here is for Hippie Shake because she's so small. And then this hole here is for our other dogs. So we just basically got pylons and we put some holes in them. They're just from the dollar store. And then we got these garden stakes. They're green, so I put white around them just to sort of allow the dog to be able to see the difference a little bit more. And then you just, stick it in either end of the cone, and then you go from there. So I'm showing you one. We have 8 of them that go in a row, and we space them out. So typically, the normal way to do cavalettis is, okay, come here, is to set them up so that they are as wide as your dog is tall. Okay, hop up. But so that's just a general suggestion, and the height of it should be the height from the ground to their elbow.
Okay.
Very low, very low. So for Funky, it's only about like 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah.
Not even. You can see from here to here.
It's quite low. Yeah.
That's where you start.
Maybe 4 inches. Yeah.
Actually, this isn't a rubble. What is this called?
Her wrist.
Her wrist, yeah. You can go to their elbow, but that would be for something that's more advanced, and I wouldn't recommend that you start with that unless you got advice from somebody that can see your dog before you do something that's too hard. But that's just the width. How wide they are is how tall your dog is at the withers, and then just starting from like the ground to their wrist height is a good like basic to start that should be fairly safe.
And the moral is you're really looking for your dog to use some of those stabilizer muscles. I'm not sure if they can hear that on the thing. Use those stabilizer muscles and really, focus as they're making their way through them, because we have some dogs who we need to really rein in a little bit when they go through the cavalettis. They're super pumped and they want to go through them really fast because they know that there's going to be a reward at the end. But we really want the dog to think about, each step. Almost.
Yeah, it's a great exercise.
Okay, so if you have any questions about dog sports injury prevention, if you have a dog who you have rehabbed, we'd love to hear about it in the chat. So let us know in there. If you are on mobile, chat is beneath the player window. And if you are on desktop, it's beside the player window. So we've talked a little bit about warming up and some things that you can do, outside of the agility ring. So what about cool down? Let's talk about cool down for a minute.
Cool down is probably the most important thing. It actually, warming your dog up is really important, obviously, but cooling your dog down is equally or even more important, because if you have a dog that's just worked their butt off and then you go put them in the crate, their muscles just seize up, and that's a great way to cause injury for your dog. So walking your dog out is so important. So and also knowing when to stop. Like, there's a lot of people that train their dog to the point where like they're exhausted, and that's really not good for them either.
For a lot of reasons. But let's just because I think that's a really important point. I want to get back to that for sure.
Okay.
But let's talk about how easy it is to just finish your run and put your dog away. You're tired, or finish your agility training and put your dog away because you're tired and you're ready to go, or you want to do some socializing or whatever. But it's really important your agility training, you need to sort of bookend that with these ideas of warming up and cooling down. It's really important that you plan time. If you only have until 9:15, then you know that maybe the last 15 minutes or last 10 minutes or whatever you're going to set aside for cooling your dog down, because it's really easy to overlook it, and then you run the risk of having a dog that's in a bad way.
Yeah, so I just like to put my dog on leash, and I just like to go for like a nice walk just to let them cool out a little bit. It's really, really important to do. But to be honest with you, now that like I have such a ritual of warming my dogs up and cooling them down, it's actually something that I look forward to doing, especially, before going in the ring. It's just that time to sort of, stop talking to everybody that's around and just sort of focus on my dog. Or after the run's over, just take a second to reflect on what just happened. And, it's a great routine to add. I will tell you though, I'm the type of handler that I have multiple dogs running, and it can be extremely difficult to warm the dogs up and cool them down if I'm running like dogs back to back to back in the ring, which happens more often than I'd like. So if I know that's going to happen, then I prepare for that. I convince Ken to come with me to either help me warm dogs up or cool them out, or our group of people that travel for competitions together, we're so lucky because we help each other so much. So we'll walk each other's dogs out for if we know that we have to go to the next dog. So we just plan for that so that there's no excuses. It's the dogs come first. It's the most important thing, because if you don't take good care of them, sometimes their life span in dog sports can be short, or you end up getting injuries.
Right. Yeah. And that's, again, we're touching on the things that we talked about at the beginning, but you're really serving two purposes. You're keeping your dog sound, but you're also allowing them to have a long career in agility. We look at professional athletes, and the amount of time they spend on warming up, cooling down, the rehabilitation when they're not on the field or the rink or whatever is really great. And we often overlook that with our dogs. We forget how important it is that we are really taking care of their bodies as well. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to do the stream today, is to talk about some of these really important factors. And we know they're so important that Kale has made it just part of our agility classes, these warm up and cool down and things like that.
It's really cute when you come in and like the classes, like walking their dogs around together, like chit-chatting before class while they warm their dogs up. I love that.
Yeah.
And then just keeping with the cool down thing, or even part of warm up. But after your dog is warm, you can do a little bit of stretching. So if I warm her up, I'll stretch her out a little bit before I run, but I make sure that a lot of the stretching that I do is going to be after. So once I've cooled her out, then I will do some stretches. And there's a bunch of different stretches that you can do, but the ones that we thought we would teach you today are just really basic, simple ones. Again, wouldn't be right for me to teach you like crazy stuff that I do, because I just don't know the fitness and the experience level of your dog, and I would be really upset if you did something because I told you to, and you hurt your dog. So.
No, that's really important that we do point that out. To reach out to a professional, seek a professional to give you some of that guidance specific to your dog. It's no different than finding out about a new medication on TV and then going and getting it without asking your doctor.
Yeah.
And it makes the same amount of sense. But let's get back. So you talked for a moment about running your dog essentially into the ground. They're just so tired, whether you're training or whatever. But not only is that hard on them physically, but it's hard on them mentally.
Yeah.
You can really burn a dog out if every time you train, you're training them until they've just got no more gas in the tank.
Yeah, they can either get slower, or they can make more mistakes, or some dogs actually get higher, or they get sillier or not as sharp. Because they're fatigued.
Yeah.
So, you want to be aware of how long. I don't train my dogs for very long. I'm lucky I have lots of dogs. So I'll train one for a couple minutes. Usually I train for like 5 to 7 minutes, I would say is about normal for me. And then I'll walk them out and I'll get the next dog out. I usually warm them all up at the same time. And then I'll just rotate them through, walk them out a little bit, get the next one out. And then I do a big walkout with all of the dogs at the end of my training session.
Yeah.
It's kind of the pattern.
Absolutely. So I see Shendalyn Blake mentions, yes, my husband is my warm-up, cool-down guy while I walk the course.
That's a good husband.
Yeah, and I know that role, and to be honest, I'm sure he doesn't mind. I mean, I really enjoy if I get an opportunity to play tug with the dogs or walk the dogs out after Kale's had a big run or whatever. So I know how much fun
So
that can be.
appreciated.
Yeah, and it's great, and it allows the handler, if you do have a helper or whatever, a spouse or whoever, it allows the handler to just sort of stay focused or come down after that run because it's sometimes after a tough loss, knock bar, something like that, or a big win, it's hard to be thinking solely about your dog at that time.
For sure.
So we talked a little bit in a previous live stream about the idea of running your dog so much that they're demotivated. I'll drop a link in the chat. I'll drop a link in the comment or description after the video if you'd like to check that out. But, that is pretty important. So is there anything else that springs to mind when we talk about cooling down?
I was going to show them the stretches.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, it'd be awesome. And it also gives me an opportunity to use the stretch cam. Oh. So I'm excited to share this with you guys.
Sitting on my lap. Ow.
Your feet will be asleep and you'll end up falling down. Okay, ready to go to stretch cam here? Okay, you might need to back up just a tiny bit just so you can see Funky Monkey.
Good.
Perfect.
Okay, so when you're doing some stretches, now I'm not going to do them too crazy with her because she hasn't really been exercising now. She's been sitting on my lap. But essentially what you can do is, we call these cookie stretches. So rather than taking your dog's limbs and stretching them yourself, slam, I'm not doing anything exciting. You can just do cookie stretches so the dog can follow the food and they'll stretch just as much as they're willing, and that way you're not overdoing something that they're not ready for. So I like to do this with my dog facing away from me. So I've just lured her away from me. I take my free hand that doesn't have treats and I'm just going to secure it underneath her belly just to sort of hold her against me. And then what I'm going to do is take the food and lure her nose towards her shoulder, reward, then towards her elbow, reward, and then all the way down to her paw. So I'm not stretching this whole side here. And then I'm going to switch the food. I'm holding her again so that she can't curl too much. I go shoulder. You know what she wants to do? Her favorite one. She eats her. And then I can go to her elbow. Then I can go to her foot. Yes, and then I would repeat that on both sides. There's one particular one that she really likes, which I will do last, which she keeps trying to do on her own.
She's offering.
And then I'll do the back end. So again, I hold her secure. I'm going to lure her nose to her hip. Here, babe, get it. Miss. Yes, good girl. Then to her knee. Then to her foot. Yes, good girl. And then switch sides. So again, secure her to her bum. You're very bendy, Funk. To her knee. To her foot, and then I would repeat that. And then for whatever reason, this is her favorite one. So again, holding her steady, I put my hand between her front legs and I pull her. I pull her head. Can you see that and appreciate that?
It's hard to it's hard to appreciate. Yeah, if you put it sideways. That's pretty good.
Good girl. So I lure her head between her legs. Yes, good girl. I don't know why, but she loves that one. And also too, here, babe. I will put the dog into a sit. I'll just place my hand on her back so she can't raise, and I'll just lure her head up, and that sort of gives her a bit of a neck stretch. Good girl, yes, very nice. And then another one that I'll often do is get them sitting, and then I'll get them to put their paws up on my arm. Come on, good, sit, good. And then I'll lift them up this way. Good girl, and reward her for that. And then I can get her to stand. Yes. And then I can stretch her belly like that way as well. And then if your dog's really confident with that, you can work sits to stands in this position, but that's very, very difficult. Okay, sit. Good. Pause up. Pause up. Yes, good girl. So those are just some basics. I mean, there's lots more that you can do, but those are easy ones. Okay.
Yeah, that was really good.
Just with some treats. So she's only going to follow it as far as she wants to.
Right.
So I'm
Which
not
is what's so important about
pushing
that.
her more than what I should.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make because Funky can only, to get the cookie, she can only go as far as she's able or as far as she's willing.
The other thing I like about it too is I can often tell if like there's one side that's tighter because she won't like be as comfortable going that way.
Yeah.
So you can sort of tell things as well. And I find because I do it more often, it's increased her flexibility. She's not exactly, don't listen, Fun. she's not exactly built for turning. She's like, we always call her a brick with legs. So she's very fast on the straightaways, but turning was always an issue for us. So I, you know, along with certain training to get her to collect and turn well, I found that improving her flexibility also helped with her being able to turn more easily on course.
Yeah, and certainly we do that with any of our dogs. And when we're introducing, if you're at home and you're thinking, geez, I'd really like to try doing some cookie stretches with my dog, start off slow.
And
you know,
remember that you
ones.
shouldn't do that unless your dog is warm. So pretend you
really
didn't see
important.
me just do that. I was just doing it for the, you know, that wasn't too crazy of one. But,
Right.
you know, I took her for a bike ride this morning. I came home and I did a bunch of stretches with her, but she was completely warm when I did it.
Yeah, so only stretch a dog who's warm.
Just like a human, you shouldn't really do a lot of, a deep stretching when you're just sitting around doing nothing. You would stretch after you were warming up or you were cooling down. So same thing we would do for ourselves, we would do with our dogs.
Yeah, really great. And so I think maybe we can end on that. I thought there was lots of great information offered with the warm-ups, cool downs, healthy hug, Kale the kibble counter. Lots of great information there.
I'm
Now,
not ashamed.
If you're watching this on the replay and you have any other comments or questions, make sure you drop them in the comments below the video. But I'd like to especially thank our amazing stretching demonstration dog, Funky Monkey, for making it her second appearance.
I think she enjoyed that.
I think she did too on the live stream. And if you guys have any ideas that you would like us to discuss on these live streams, we publish videos every single week, and we publish 3 live streams 3 out of 4 Fridays of the month, because I'm also a firefighter and I've got to work one of those Fridays, so we aren't able to live stream every
I
Friday.
can't do all this fancy stuff by myself.
No, there's a lot going on here. But with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thanks for all the great comments and questions in the chat. If this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And on that note, I'm Ken.
I'm Kale, and this is Funky Monkey.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.